Hi, my name is Rob Tuft from In Time Tech, and I'm here with Tech Talks, and we are talking to Eric Crawford of Takeoff Genie. We are building an app together with Eric to help make general aviation safer. We want to save lives for those aviation accidents at takeoff. So let's dive in. All right, to kick things off, my name is Rob Tuft. I'm with In Time Tech. I do product engineering. I'm my VP there, and I want to introduce Eric Crawford. Welcome to the show, Eric. Can you
Thank you.
introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here. Again, Eric Crawford. I'm with Takeoff Genie, and my background, I was an engineer in manufacturing environments for quite a while. Built out a technology business, sold that after about 17 years. And now Takeoff Genie is one of the two businesses that I have. This one is a SaaS AI business that's, Takeoff Genie is focused on leveraging today's technology to improve general aviation.
So you're an entrepreneur.
Against maybe some of my wife's feedback, it does seem to be becoming serial.
Great. We're in the right place. We're entrepreneurs as well. So tell me about Takeoff Genie. What's the problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah. So with general aviation, crashes are the second most common, takeoffs are the second most common reason for crashes. Number one being what's called CFIT, or controlled flight into terrain, meaning that there was nothing wrong with the airplane. Airplane was 100% mechanically fine. The pilot was fine, and the airplane literally was flown into the ground. And what was interesting was when we started digging into this data on crashes, what we found was that it wasn't that the pilots didn't have the information, it's that it's the way the information was presented. If they were in a tough situation, they could maybe, look at a piece of avionics and see that their airspeed was too fast, but they wouldn't actually get an alert to it. And with Takeoff Genie, what we're really trying to do is filter out all the noise and give general aviation pilots an application that when they are getting ready for takeoff, and that is potentially an unsafe situation because of the airport that they're at, because of the way the airplane is loaded, because of their specific aircraft, our app aggregates all of that data. And then when needed, we'll push an alert to the pilot and say, hey, this is an unsafe situation because of X. That's really what we're driving.
So you shared this with me before. That pilot is in the cockpit with no co-pilot.
That's correct.
It's all on him or her, right?
That's correct.
And what's going on in that cockpit?
Well, I mean, as a general aviation pilot for coming up in about 5 years across multiple airframes, the biggest thing that I noticed getting into it was that it is a task saturation environment. There are so many pieces of information. There are so many things that a pilot needs to take into account. And there are checklists for this. But even then, there are so many different pieces of avionics, and today's technology is somewhat double-edged. It's given them more information, but at the same time, that's somewhat detrimental because it's more things to analyze. So what ends up happening is that you have so many things that you're trying to do just before you even move the airplane that inevitably sometimes things get missed.
And what are those things that can be missed?
Things like recognizing that, for example, and unfortunately years ago, about 3 years ago, there was a crash of a father and a son in central Idaho. They came here, they were visiting from Florida, and this airport was significantly higher up than the airports they were used to flying from. And when he was focused on getting the plane ready for takeoff for his son and getting fuel and those kinds of things, it didn't cross his mind that he needed to do a takeoff calculation adjustment for the elevation of that airport.
Because at higher elevation, the air density is less.
Correct.
It takes more power to take off.
Yeah. So, for example, the type of airplane that he was in, that airplane in central Idaho versus Florida, when all conditions are the same payload, same fuel, same weather, everything the same, you transition that to central Idaho, and it will take 3 times the runway length. just by that transition. So, obviously no one knows for sure what was going on in that father's head,
Yep.
but most likely he was taking into account everything else and unfortunately then didn't do those takeoff calculations to figure out what the climb rate of his airplane would be, not realizing that it would be a third or a quarter of the performance back home. And so unfortunately was not able to climb out of the rising terrain. And again, it was a CFIT accident where the plane was fine, he was fine. There was nothing leading up to it that caused a crash. It was just unfortunately that he missed those calculations.
And he and his son lost their lives.
They did. And it happens all over the time, especially along our area, because people come into our area in Idaho, Utah, Oregon, these areas especially, in regard to those types of accidents. So,
And you're sharing with me that with a co-pilot in the cockpit, there's a safety factor there. And if you look at the data, there are very, very few accidents commercially
oh yeah,
compared to general aviation.
yeah, yeah, and that's a big part of it is that I know as a pilot that I've had mistakes over my years, and fortunately, everyone has been okay when I've made those mistakes. They've not been major, but yes, you're by yourself, so you don't have that second set of ears, that second set of eyes, that second emotion to tap you on the shoulder and go, whoa, 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 hey, wait a second, you forgot to take into account the extra fuel, or oh, we're now carrying 4 people instead of 3. Those types of things that a co-pilot would normally do, or first officer, and those don't exist in general aviation in almost all cases.
And
So-
in fact, in your crew or your passengers that you're taking
Mhm.
could be distracting you as a single pilot.
Oh, absolutely.
Talking, there could be some emotion. One of the accidents you talked about was a couple had just gotten engaged, so there's all that emotion.
Yeah.
They want to do a takeoff, so all wrapped up in that, and he's still trying to figure out what I do for takeoff, and mistakes were made.
Yeah, and that was another very unfortunate story where this was a pilot that literally had thousands
Yeah.
of hours with United.
With United.
And with United, very, very highly skilled pilot, and went up in a small general aviation airplane literally 2 days after getting married and smashed into a hillside, killing both of them.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And what are the number of accidents that happen in the U.S. that are CFIT accidents?
I don't remember the exact number as I recall. I mean, it's well into the hundreds. I think it's upwards around 500 to 600 a year.
Yeah.
Are these types of crashes. And they're incredibly painful for someone like me because these are 100% preventable. These were not ones.
Not a mechanical.
Yeah. They were not ones where there was drugs or alcohol involved. These are not ones where, a wing fell off. These are literally just the pilot getting overwhelmed with everything going on and missed, a couple critical details. And unfortunately, people lost their lives. And the really sad part is that it's not just the life of the person who made the mistake.
Right.
It's quite often they have their spouse, they have their kids, they have family. They have business associates. And those individuals don't know anything about flying. So they didn't even know there was anything wrong.
And they can make it worse where they see something's going on. They could sense some danger and they could get emotional. And now, the pilot's trying to calm them, but still trying to make a determination of what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, for sure. Was there a moment when you realized the need for this solution, this app?
Yeah, it was actually, and it's still burned in my synapses from years ago. I was at a larger airport and I went to go and taxi and I called the tower for clearance to take off. And they said, oh yeah, you can go ahead and take off, from that taxiway and, taxi from there. So it was basically like 2/3 of the way down the runway. And I looked at it and said, oh yeah, I'm fine. And because it was a very long runway, I was by myself, had, less than full fuel. So I was loaded very lightly. I thought, oh, absolutely, I can just take off from here. And there was even a part of my brain that's like, oh, well, the tower said I could take off from here. So I'm sure it'll be fine. And as I turned and throttled up to take off, I'm starting to go down the runway. And then I realized I have no idea how much runway I need. And I have no idea how much runway I have left. And it was one of those situations where I was perfectly fine from a safety standpoint. I didn't I don't remember exactly how much of the available runway I used, but the point was that, like, wait a second, I just put myself in this position and I was knowingly, I was fine. I was well rested. Everything was great. And I went, wait a second, this is shocking. There isn't a tool for this. So I started looking for tools to be like, hey, I want a tool that will tell me, hey, when I approach the runway or even before then, that will tell me real time based on current wind, based on the current airport, based on my aircraft, how much runway will I need? And then compare that to how much runway is available and give me that percentage. Like, hey, you're going to use 40%. You're going to use 70%, whatever that number is. And there's literally not a tool out there, which was shocking to me.
And so it wasn't a tool. And so keep going with the story.
Yeah. So I have some experience in custom software, both in the commercial world, in manufacturing environments. I've also built some custom software for my industry, for the previous industry I was in, for audio video. And then I looked at it and I'm like, there's an app here that could be created that would give pilots these push alerts when they're in an unsafe situation. And otherwise, it just sits in the back end. It doesn't do anything. It records the airplane performance. But if there's not an at-risk situation, it doesn't do anything. If there is an at-risk situation, it could then push an alert to them and say, hey, warning, you're wanting to take off on a very hot day at a very high altitude. You could have a potential safety issue during takeoff.
Yeah.
And so I built a little custom one myself from some performance data from my airplane, and realized that there was a way to do this even better. And that was obviously the start of our conversation.
Great.
Within time.
Great. Yep. And then we've started to build out this app to make it more full featured. And so walk us through that experience. I'll get started. So you have this app, Takeoff Genie. You have it on your iPad or you have it on your iPhone, and you're traveling into an airport or all these locations, airstrips, airports, they're all known.
Correct.
So we travel, we arrive at that airport. First thing shows up after you've been there for 10 minutes. Hey, looks like you're flying today.
Yeah.
And then you say yes. What do you enter in after that?
Yeah. And so to clarify there, what you just touched on is what I argue is the fundamental difference at our core and in our values at Takeoff Genie is that we are not an application designed just to give you information. What is sometimes called a pull request.
Yep.
We are an entirely push request or push featured application. So you hit on one of our core features right at the beginning, is that when you show up at the airport, the application then pushes you an alert, says, hey, are you going to fly today? And you say, oh, yes, I am. After hitting yes, that says, okay, what do you have on there for people? How much weight do you have in passengers? What do you have on there for fuel? You put in that, and it already has all the information on your aircraft. So once you put in that information, then you hit next, and then it takes that information, it aggregates that real time with the airport. What's the elevation? What's the humidity? What's the wind? Pulls in all of those variables. There's roughly 9 of them. Aggregates all of those. Then looks at it and says, okay, based on your aircraft and all these different variables, you should take off on runway 11. You're going to have a headwind of 6 knots. You're going to have a crosswind of maybe 10 knots blowing from the right. And you should expect a takeoff distance of X and then a 50-foot obstacle clearance of Y. And it pushes that right onto the device.
So it's truly like a co-pilot, if you will, right? Somebody there looking at the data, plugged into the performance of the plane that you're flying, knowing what it's capable of, and then providing a warning if it's not safe to fly on the runway, and then the other conditions, all the other 9 variables that are at play.
Yeah. And the fun part of this, and I think this is kind of this alignment of the stars of where we are now, is this huge function we have available to us nowadays with AI, right? Of being able to predict things. Yep. So this is where we have this alignment in today that's really cool, that a lot of these aircraft, there isn't any data at all. on takeoff performance.
There's no performance.
Yeah,
data.
there's no performance data.
There's
So
nobody that had measured this, recorded it,
Yeah.
put it in a chart.
yeah, back in 1960, 70, when a lot of these general aviation airplanes were built, they just didn't have the data.
Yep.
So what we're doing is we're logging those takeoffs, and then using AI, we're able to then predict.
We're building
based-
the data set,
Yeah,
right? That doesn't exist.
exactly.
We're recording the takeoffs, building the data set, and then using the AI to predict if it's safe to fly.
Yeah, because we may have some data points that say, okay, we know how the airplane will perform at 5 knots
Yep.
for a 5-knot headwind.
Right.
We know what it will do at a 15-knot headwind, but we have no idea when it's 11.
Yeah.
We really don't know. Or what if there's a 15-knot tailwind? Should the pilot take off? And I know from an engineering standpoint, looking at some of the data's wrong. Like I just know analytically.
You look at those performance charts and you're like, no, that's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's spots where it's a linear function.
Yeah.
And I'm
You're
like,
that's
not linear.
Yeah.
That should be exponential or that should be logarithmic. But back in 1965, when they did the data, they just didn't have that ability to create that. So that's where that's this fun part of us taking the performance data we do have available on some aircraft, combining that with us tracking, with modern electronics, being able to track the real-time position of that aircraft and its altitude, and then combining that with many, many, many of those takeoffs across multiple aircraft in multiple regions, then feeding that into our AI engine, we're then able to fill in the gaps in these charts that otherwise the pilot wouldn't even know.
So a pilot would take this app,
Mhm.
download it from the Apple's App Store, put it on their iPad or put it on their iPhone, and then fly with that.
Correct.
Right? They're gonna be driving to the airport or the airstrip. It's gonna notice it's there.
Mhm.
Are you flying today? Yes. Get in the plane, plug in the weight, all the other a flap setting, and all the other pieces of data. We can hit APIs to know what the elevation is, what the wind speed is, temperature, and then with that phone or that iPad with them in the cockpit, we can tell them if it's safe or not within a certain margin of safety, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And so the problem we're solving here is, first of all, making a prediction based upon AI, if it's safe or not to fly, that they were trying to do on their own by looking up performance charts that may or may not exist.
Yeah.
Right. And then for the data that doesn't exist, recording that data on takeoff, because the phone or the iPad has an accelerometer, it has positional data, spatial data, it knows where it's at, when it's taken off, all that, plus it'll record the other all the 9 variables, record all that, send it to our back end, save that, build our data set, and be able to predict much better for the next takeoff.
Well, yeah, and the other part of this I think is really exciting is it isn't just this predictive side for the pilot. The other part of this that I think is really exciting is that I was talking with my flight instructor about this, and they're incredibly excited to get the application in play because they brought up something that happens in flight schools is that once a pilot in training has their solo, they can now fly by themselves. They need to do a certain number of takeoffs and landings, certain number of flight hours before they can get what's called a private pilot license, which is what allows you to then take people with you. And he was telling me, he said, one of the problems is I can't go sit on the side of the runway and watch one of my students do touch and goes for 4 hours. And then I combine that across 30 students. That's not possible. But because you guys are logging all of the data, we may be in a situation where we have a 10,000-foot runway and the students only need 1,000 feet to take off. So we don't care about, whether or not the runway's long enough. But he said what we're really excited about is then being able to see that data aggregated. So then we can look at it and go, okay, look at the way John is taking off versus the way Matthew is taking off. And then be able to show them that data, talk with them about it to help them be better pilots. Because you may have a pilot, and this is another unfortunate thing that happens, one of the reasons takeoff is the second most dangerous, especially with students, is that they will not be aware of the stall speed of that aircraft, which is when the airplane no longer flies. So they will take off and they will pull back on the yoke. They will pull back on the stick, and they will put the airplane in a vertical climb that is steeper than what that airplane can handle, and it will lead to a crash.
Yeah.
Well, with this data being presented to these flight instructors, they will be able to see and go, oh, wow, Matthew has been taking off too aggressively. He's been pulling back on the yoke or pulling back on the stick too fast and putting the airplane in a dangerous angle and literally going too slow. They can have that conversation with that student before something bad happens, which is part of it that we're really excited about.
Awesome. So an opportunity for flight schools to use the app and also to save lives, individual lives, right? I think that's for me, that's what gets me super intrigued and interested, is that there's an opportunity to save lives, right? With this app, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and here's to kind of, again, maybe dork out a little bit on my engineering world. The thing was, when I was looking at this originally, I went, okay, if we're looking at saving lives, how do we do it? Well, the problem is saving lives is what's referred to as a lag measure.
Yeah.
Right. So to be able to save lives, you can't just go out and say, we're going to save lives. You need to look back and go, okay, what changes do we need to make in the actions to then get the correct lag measure of saving lives? And what we noticed, like I mentioned earlier, was that this isn't about having access to data. That's not what it is, because these pilots already have, in many cases, all the information they need. But us being able to aggregate that data and then predict it so that they don't have to estimate it and do it in 3 seconds instead of 2 or 3 minutes, where they would actually have to try and calculate this out, I think is incredible. That part of it is where this gets really exciting. And when we talk saving lives, I think then what gets the kind of dovetail into that is that when we save the life of someone in general aviation, it's not just the pilot that we're saving. Yeah. Very rarely do pilots fly by themselves. They fly with their spouses. They fly with their kids. They fly with their friends. They fly with their golf buddies. And usually none of these people know how to fly. They're along for the ride. And in situations, these individuals are losing their lives and they did nothing wrong. Yeah. The pilot was the one that made the mistake, but it wasn't just the pilot's life that was lost. It was all of these other individuals. And sometimes it's the people on the ground. The person that's in a car driving down the road, and this person does an emergency landing or runs off the end of the runway and hits a car and kills someone in a car. So what I think is really exciting about Takeoff Genie is that we're not just talking about the people that are saving lives of the people making the mistakes. We're also talking about saving the lives of the people who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's
no fault of their own.
Yeah. They were riding along with their brother-in-law, Johnny, and they thought they were okay. And if we can now push that alert to Johnny and say, hey, you have your airplane loaded 200 pounds heavier than you're used to because you're carrying, 2 of your nieces. This is an unsafe situation. And we can push that to him right on his device, real time, and say, hey, warning, this is a bad situation.
Do not take off.
Yeah. And then he can go, oh, shoot. Oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah. And then go, okay, no, I can't take off. I need to wait a different time of day. I need less fuel. I need less bags, whatever it is. I think is a pretty exciting mission we have at Takeoff Genie.
Yeah. Making aviation, general aviation, safer.
Yeah.
For the pilots and for the passengers.
Yeah. So
does this not exist in the market today? Are there not similar apps that do this thing?
No, there aren't. And I dug very, very hard to find it. And I think there's multiple reasons. One is that there's various applications out there now to assist pilots. They're available and
ForeFlight is one.
ForeFlight and Adventure Pilot or iFly, and there's these other applications out there, but they're designed more about providing the pilots access to airport information, weather information, these different pieces of information.
Some of those 9 variables you talked about, some of them.
Yep. Exactly. And again, from a mindset of pulling that information. I have to log into the app. I have to go to this airport. I have to look at the weather report. I have to find out when it's going to be updated. I have to pull all that in. And I think what's happened is that because the iPad and mobile phones are not new, these companies have been doing this for 10-ish years. That's the wheelhouse they play in. Their entire ecosystem is built around, hey, we're a big database of data. And what we do is we give you access to that data without having to carry around an 800-page book with you.
Mm-hmm.
But no one's looking at it where, hey, wait a second, how can we fix general aviation safety? Because I think one of the other big parts that's happening with this is that I think a lot of the general aviation software world, a lot of that world, they were more thinking that these older aircraft would go away. That, an aircraft from
60s, 70s.
Yeah, these 1965 aircraft, we don't need to worry about it. It's going to go away.
There's no performance data on there, but those will be retired.
Yeah, those airplanes will be retired, and someone will buy a new one from 2005.
That will have
some of this data
charts.
Yeah. Well, for us, we looked at it and we said, well, no, because what's happening is new aircraft are so incredibly expensive that these older aircraft are really getting completely refurbished. People are gutting them down to the frame. They're reskinning them, repainting, gutting the interiors. They're doing new engines. Because you can put $100,000 into an older airplane or spend $1.5 million on a new one. So we I argue we're kind of in this right place at the right time because we're able to come in as a push alert company at its core, where we're really just focused on I will say in our app, you can't go in and say, hey, I want to look at current conditions at, McMinnville Airport in Oregon. You can't do that in our app because that's not what our app is designed around. If you want to do that, use ForeFlight, use Garmin Pilot, use Adventure Pilot, use one of these apps that are designed as like your digital encyclopedia or your digital weather book. But if you want to show up at an airport and you want to be notified, hey, these conditions are dangerous, the crosswind is too high today to fly, something like that, that's where we live and breathe.
Oh, that's awesome. Sounds like a real opportunity to save lives. And what have you've shared this with some of your pilots,
your
pilot friends. What's been their response?
When can I buy it? I mean, that's been the biggest thing is, people are so excited. Literally one of my flying groups a week ago, a guy put a notice on there. He's like, hey, I'm trying to find some type of digital app that I can use to predict takeoff so I don't have to use these super complex charts and, have them right on me in the cockpit. And literally no one had anything to offer except us with Takeoff Genie.
Oh.
So yeah, there's a pretty exciting market out there for it. We're really excited, partly because we're filling in a void that there literally is just a gap of information. Some of these individuals have airplanes where they literally don't have a chart at all. And so what we're going to be able to do is as we come in and someone registers an airframe, a Cessna 152 from 1960, we will look at it and go, oh, you know what? Hey, we don't have enough data on that airframe yet. So you can go ahead and use our app for free. You'll still be it'll still give you weather alerts and all these other things. And then once we have enough data, because as you use our app, it gets smarter every day with every takeoff. So as these users use this app, we'll be able to build out a data set on an airframe that literally doesn't exist. Cessna never created, Textron, there is no data set out there. And, Cessna's not going to go back and go, oh, we're going to go find some planes from 1960 and build out performance charts. They're not going to do that. But by leveraging, your guys' expertise in 3D tracking, location, acceleration, velocity, being able to capture that data, log it to a specific airframe, then we're able to build that out. And then all of a sudden we'll be able to go to every Cessna 152 out there and go, hey, look, we have data now that you've never had before. So now when you want to fly into, an airport at 8,000 feet elevation, we'll be able to predict for you how your plane will perform. And that's pretty exciting for us.
That's awesome. So it's the experience of the app alerting you, pushing to you, hey, this is not safe to fly. And it's also building data sets out for performance data for planes that data doesn't exist, right? And our app will record those takeoffs, build that data set, and then after a certain number of flights, we can start to predict if it's safe or not. And then all of a sudden, everybody else with that Cessna plane will be safe. Will be safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share with us about Takeoff Genie? Response.
I mean, gosh, as you know, Robert, I'm pretty passionate about this. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I could probably go on for hours, but to try and kind of slim that at least to a reasonable amount of time. One of the things that I've shared with people, I guess kind of two main things is that one, to improve general aviation safety, it is not about access to information.
Yep.
And that was proven. It's been proven for years. And unfortunately, one of the most events that's tracked, at least in my brain, was in the late 70s. I think it was 1978. For those from the Northwest that were around then, they may remember this, that an aircraft was supposed to land at Portland Airport. It approached Portland Airport, and because it had basically what happens, they went to go and drop the landing gear, and one of the landing gear lights didn't light up. The pilot went, oh, yeah, we have a landing gear problem. So they didn't land, and they circled the Portland Airport for an hour. An hour circling the Portland Airport trying to troubleshoot this landing gear light. Unfortunately, there were 3 people in the cockpit, and the airplane ran out of fuel and crashed, killing 10 people and injuring a bunch more. They had fuel gauges. I guarantee they even had, like red areas on the fuel gauges warning them. They had prediction of how much fuel they had left. And that's a core event that's at least burned in my brain, because with Takeoff Genie, we're not requiring, we will never require the user to go in and click to see if it's going to be safe, because our app will push alert to them. A really quick story that was very similar to that was a friend of mine. He was taking off from a runway here in Idaho in the morning. It was a grass strip. He went to go and take off. He was heavily loaded. He went to go and take off. It was actually the heaviest he said his plane's ever been loaded. He went to go and take off. The plane just didn't accelerate enough. So we went to go and hit the brakes. Well, the grass was wet. The plane slid off the end of the runway and crashed. Very fortunately, him and his friend were fine. Everything was okay. But it destroyed a $500,000 airplane. With Takeoff Genie, we have the ability to then predict that. And when the individual shows up at that grass strip, because we're tracking location, to be able to say, hey, Jonathan, be careful. It's morning. They'll be due on the strip. Braking performance will be decreased. And takeoff distance will be lengthened because it's grass and because it's wet. So those kinds of things I think because he's a very, very smart pilot. It had nothing to do with intelligence. It had nothing to do with access to data. But he was obviously more concerned about other things. And those things didn't cross his mind. And unfortunately, as a result, the airplane was destroyed. Unfortunately, they were okay. But something like,
that could have been prevented.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think it's definitely a common problem in the world. We have all this access to data, but there's an information gap. It's like all this data, but then how do we make decisions based upon that data?
Yeah.
And there's a cognitive load to look up that data and make an assessment on your own. In the cockpit, you're trying to take off. Let's have an app that does all this for them.
Yeah.
And alerts them, pushes to them, hey, it is safe or it's not safe to fly. And we can save lives for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, hopefully you guys can kind of put up a sample of a performance chart here, because
sure,
I've showed them with you. I've showed them to you. And
tracing the lines across.
You're tracing this thing across, and you're still not taking into account all the variables, but you're going through this multi-step tiered chart, and you're doing this over a chart that's been, photocopied 100 times since it was first created in 1975. Yeah. And you're using this chart to try and predict what your takeoff is. And then if during that time that you first do it, then 20 minutes later you get a new weather report and the wind has shifted, you got to do the whole thing all over again. Yeah. And I think a fair number of times, unfortunately, pilots are under pressure by someone or the environment and like, no, I don't need to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and take off anyways.
They're rushed, feel pressured to take off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something changed in the weather, in the loading, something. And they didn't even realize that, oh, I'm 100 pounds overweight and it's hot outside. This is a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. A lot for that pilot to take in and try to assess, calculate.
Yeah. Well, and exactly what you said, right? We have all this information out there.
Yep.
It's not that we don't have access to the information. It's how do we take that information and put it in a way that is presentable to the pilot when they need it, and being able to feed that information to them. So, pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's a real opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're excited. We're starting some fundraising for it.
Okay.
And really for us, the type of people we're looking to join this mission are people that are interested in improving general aviation safety. The ones that have that same passion I do, that these fatalities are incredibly unfortunate because there's it's not something where a data point was missing or screws came off or something. It was just that we weren't presenting the information to the pilot effectively, and people are losing their lives because of it. So people that are passionate about aviation want to improve it. And then also those that look and see that, hey, this is something that's really exciting about just how big it could become.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as we expand Takeoff Genie, we're not only going to be doing takeoffs, right? Now we can start doing things as we start building out our data sets. We can start looking and, for example, if we know where they're landing, we can push an alert to them once they approach a geofence of the airport and say, ding, hey, just so you know, winds are, you're going to have a 3-knot tailwind and a 5 or a 15-knot crosswind from the right. Because I know as a pilot, when I go to land, the tower, if there is one, or the radio where I'm getting the weather from, neither of them breaks that apart to what's called the crosswind component.
Mm-hmm.
They simply say, hey, there's a wind blowing at this direction, at this velocity.
And it's up to you.
Yeah, and then in my head, I'm going, okay, wait, let me see. Okay, that's a crosswind from the right. It's kind of coming at me, so it's a little bit of a cross. I have to do all that while I'm in the middle of landing, which is, a very dangerous time to start now going off and trying to do calculations. So that side of it, there's a lot we can expand here. We talked about the flight school, being able to present that data of flight school. It's we think it's a pretty amazing place for us to be. We're excited to have others join our mission.
Yeah, awesome. So Eric, thanks for talking to us about Takeoff Genie. From our side, from In Time Tech, we know software, we know how to write code, build apps.
Yeah,
we know data science, we know the cloud, and so it's been great partnering with you. And we're gonna make this happen and finish this app and get it out there. Plans to get it out in the hands of real pilots to do testing, right, in a beta test, and then really prove out in the field how it's working, and then start to roll it out beyond that. So appreciate you and your insight in being a pilot yourself, an entrepreneur, seeing this problem where we could really save lives, bring it to us, showing us what we need to do for the app to be built, and we leverage our expertise, and we're excited about seeing where this will go. So
yeah. Well, yeah, and for anybody that's watching or listening to this, you can visit us at takeoffgenie.com, register as a beta tester. We're looking for as many pilots as we can to just run the app in the background, because as long as that app is running in the background, it's not doing any tracking whatsoever except on the specific runway. So it's the only place we're tracking data. Yep, is on the runway. We're recording that takeoff, recording the activities of that aircraft, and that's it. So you can have the app on your phone or on your iPad. Mm-hmm. It'll record that takeoff. That allows us to build out our data set. There's no cost for that. And so we encourage any pilots that are out there. We'd love for you to go to our site, sign up as a beta tester so we can get you one of our beta versions. And obviously anyone else who's interested in joining our mission, please reach out.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And this is an opportunity for anybody who's a pilot to participate in this effort to make general aviation safer.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess to kind of close that side out, that's a big part of it, is that let's say that I don't know, you always take off from, the Boise airport and you're in a Cessna.
Yep.
You're going to burn 1,000 feet of an 8,000 foot long runway. You don't need Takeoff Genie to tell you whether that's a safe takeoff.
Sure.
Right. I mean, if that's where you normally fly, I wouldn't say that it would be worthwhile to purchase our app. However, we would request that you have the application, because just you taking off from that airport allows us to build out our data set. Yeah. Because then when you take off when it's 105 degrees, and then when you take off when it's 5 degrees, we're logging that for that airframe, so that then we can help other people that are flying into backcountry, that are flying in Florida, that are going into these more obscure locations. We can help make them safer just by you simply having the app on your phone.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a real call out for everybody to participate in using this app, building out our data sets, and helping not only themselves fly safer, but everybody else.
Yeah.
The whole community of pilots.
Yeah, maybe to ramble once more, I'd almost say it's almost like our own little wiki.
Yeah.
It's almost like a Wikipedia where, hey, just simply having the application on your phone or on your tablet and recording that takeoff, it's costing you zero. It's taking zero effort. And your takeoffs could be the ones that save, a father and son.
Father and son.
Yeah. Just with your takeoff data. So we're pretty excited.
Exciting. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely. Thank you, Rob.
Great to talk to you. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you. Hey, fellow aviators, Eric here with Takeoff Genie, and wanted to show you how the app performs when it's already installed and configured. So what would happen is you arrive at the airport, and after a set time duration, the application recognizes that you're within a geofence of the airport, and it pushes an alert to you here to say, hey, you're at the Nampa airport. Are you flying today? And all you need to do is then just click on that alert, and you go ahead and say, yes, I am flying today. Continue. And now you just enter in how much fuel you have on board, the weight of your baggage, the people weight. Go ahead and hit continue. It gives you a warning here, says that you're actually overweight for the weight of your aircraft. We're going to adjust that baggage weight down so that we're under our gross takeoff weight. Hit continue. Now it's giving us how your aircraft will perform based on current weather at that specific airport. You can see here it's selected runway 11 just to make sure that way you're taking off with a headwind. And again, let's instead say you decide to take off on runway 29. It automatically adjusts and says, hey, look, you can take off that way, but recognize you're now going to have a 5-knot tailwind. And then down here on your takeoff performance, it automatically adjusts. Now, it's important that you don't stop at this point, that you go ahead and select how you're going to take off. And let's go ahead and say we're just going to take off at 0 degrees. And then we want to make sure and hit let's fly. Because when we do that, then what that does is that tells the application what your settings are and that you're going to be taking off so that it can track your takeoff, record actually your ground roll, and then your actual departure from the runway, and then log that to start building predictive data based on you as a pilot and your specific N number. So we hope you like this demo. Please make sure and add your comments down below. We'd love your thoughts on what we can do to make this better.
Thanks for watching this In Time Tech podcast. If you'd like to learn more about what we can offer you, please visit our website, intimetech.com, where you'll be able to see the different capabilities and technologies we could provide you in your business. Also, don't forget to subscribe and follow us to get more amazing content like this. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.